Guys, welcome. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Joe Gelbach. I am our Government Affairs Manager here at the Richmond Association of Realtors. And yeah, I'm sorry, Matt is having trouble getting in. All right, so ground rules for our meeting. First of all, thank you for taking time to join us. Thank you for your patience. I have all of you muted right now, but you have the power to unmute yourself. I ask that you don't do that until I recognize you for a question at the end of this. But if you do have questions for the Q&A session at the end for John, we put them in the chat, and I will then compile them, and then I'll kind of be the mic at the end to ask the questions. So with that, Wayne Gauthier, our president this year, is going to give us a little bit of an update on the market.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being able to attend. John, we're thrilled that you're able to join us this afternoon. So, as we've been seeing in the marketplace, our business has still been moving forward. We're grateful that we've been able to continue to work. We're looking at the numbers, just comparing week over week from just last year. And while we know we've been short on number of listings somewhat, what we've been seeing though are the pendings are still staying somewhat steady week to week compared to 2019 and 2020. And we're seeing our sold numbers, even just last week, were about on par and just slightly above what we've been seeing in what we saw in 2019. We have seen a pretty significant appreciation still going on. Again, I'm looking at this report from a week to week basis, but I think agents are finding that our sellers and our buyers, the ones that are out here, are highly motivated. They're needing to move for jobs, schools, a lot of different reasons that are requiring that they can't hold out and push this back for whatever reason. So we've been able to, I think, do the best part for our community by being able to meet their real estate related needs right now. So we're thankful for the opportunity to be able to continue to work and try to do it as safely as we've all been able to. Again, I'm looking on the new listing numbers, just last week alone, for the last full week of April, the 26th through the 30th, we had more pendings than new listings coming on, and our sold were higher than they were at the end of April last year. And that's with a full month of trying to deal with the coronavirus issues that we've been seeing. So again, I think we haven't stopped. I mean, some sellers are pausing. We have seen some owners feel a little more reticent about having anyone come through their home. So we have had a few number of listings be able to go to temporarily withdrawn or released and waiting for the market, waiting for the clear, I guess I should say, with the COVID-19 issues that we've got going on. But it still seems to be strong going forward. And the agents that have been producing seem to be consistently producing right now. So I think that's a good insight. Unless Laura, you'd like to add anything else, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you and wish everybody continued good health and wealth. Take care.
Thanks, Wayne. Really appreciate it. We are delighted to have with us today County Manager of Henrico, John Vitolkas. John has been with the county since 1997, 23 years. He's been manager for since 2013. I think John and I got to know each other during the really deep recession of many years ago, when he asked me if I would work on a workshop for folks who might be looking to buy a home in the middle of recession. So we've known each other a long time. One of the great privileges of the work that I do is to get to know folks like John and really try to work in partnership with folks like John. He manages and oversees a workforce of 4,000 people, just to give you a sense of the magnitude of his job. And it's been his job for the last couple months to keep the trains running in Henrico County, and doing so while facing a significant shortfall in revenue. So, John, just want to say thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you all for the opportunity to present some information to you.
Great. Why don't we start where what I mentioned was the challenges fiscally that the COVID-19 is confronting the county with. You and your supervisors have had to make almost $100 million in cuts. Kind of, as you've said, I think to me, you throw out the old budget and you start with something that doesn't look like the old budget. So tell me how you all are making those kind of strategic decisions about necessary budget cuts.
So part of the thought in the $99 million in reduction, if you will, we introduced a budget on March the 10th. And, a month later, we were revising our revenue estimates downward to that almost $100 million mark. And that is really Henrico looking and trying to find the floor, if you will, from this thing, because I think the unemployment numbers continue to disappoint. In early March, I think that first week in March, we had 79 unemployment claims. And then it jumped up to, it was nearly 4,000, then it crossed over 4, then over 5. So make a long story short, we have gone from sub 3% unemployment to where we believe we're at 10% right now. And we're more likely as a region headed towards 16%. So our numbers, Henrico's unemployment numbers, Richmond's and Chesterfield's are almost identical to where just over 21,000 in each of the localities. And that is, so that, we've got a number of folks that are not working. The $99 million drop in revenue, what we are assuming is things like, a 25 to 30% reduction in local sales taxes, a 45 to 50% reduction in hotel taxes, a 35+% reduction in meals taxes. You look at things like investment earnings, a reduction of almost 75%. We have assumed that the state will also be passing along reductions in aid to counties and cities, particularly in the area of education. We have not assumed right now any additional federal dollars. So the reason that we've taken that approach is, again, we want to find the floor and then build from the floor up. We have been able to, as of Friday, and you'll hear more about this week, the county's budget again is balanced. We had to make a number of reductions across the board, general government, schools, in operational expenses, purchasing freeze, a hiring freeze. But we were able to ultimately not have anyone laid off, not have anyone's pay reduced. And it was really close on that latter point. We were actually looking at some internal scenarios where we would go across the board and make some actual pay reductions for all of general government, all of our schools. And we were able to, at the last minute, to avoid that simply by taking not 10 actions, but more like 100 different actions on the budgetary front. So I think we're okay from the fiscal side. The thing I worry about more than anything is, this V-shaped recovery. Now folks are talking about, does it become more like a W and it comes back in the fall? At which point, Henrico's conservative approach is still not going to be enough if we do get another significant outbreak, if you will, of COVID-19. I will tell you that I am in conversations with our other regional counterparts every other day. So we're constantly talking to Chesterfield, Hanover, the city of Richmond, Goochland, and comparing notes on what we have all done. as far as our finances. Everyone's approach is a little different, but I think at the end of the day, everyone is trying to do what they can to make sure that when things start opening up, and that's something I want to talk to you all about today, is the concept of opening up, that we all have largely a uniform plan as to what that looks like. So the budget for now is going to be okay. It does not compare, I don't believe, what we have done on the governmental side is nowhere near to what we are seeing in some of our industries, particularly the hotels and the restaurants, and the losses that we have had of employment in those two areas.
So, John, let's talk about opening up a bit. I know that I think some people think the governor is going to speak to that today. I don't know whether he is or not, but what does that look like from where you sit?
So we've actually had, we've got two groups of folks that are looking at both what opening up looks like for the government and what opening up looks like for our businesses. So I've got Anthony Romanello at our EDA and some other folks planning, some other internal staffers working with the chamber, working with the Retail Merchants Association. And the hope is that by the end of this week, we will have some sort of regional blueprint as far as what best practices look like for businesses that choose to open up, and all of this being voluntary. On the governmental side, what we are looking at doing is a phased reopening, starting with parks, libraries, our solid waste division. But I was just literally an hour ago at Dory Park in Eastern Henrico, and I was driving around thinking to myself, these parks aren't closed. I mean, the number of folks that are literally out and about, and they're all socially distancing from one another. But I think it's going to be a push-pull kind of thing, where we are going to get complaints by the approach that we are taking and are going to take, which is a soft reopening. I think some folks are they're mortified by the news that continues to play on the evening news. And at a certain point, we've got to get out of these caves that we're living in. And Henrico County, our region is not equipped for an unemployment rate of 16%. I mean, it's just, and at a certain point, I think numbers like that, Wayne, will impact some of the statistics that you were quoting. I mean, the one bright spot, Laura and I have talked about this in the economy, is real estate. So day one, even when we went to reduced operations on the county side, we did everything we could to make sure that real estate transactions didn't get held up in a court somewhere. So we've been able to do that. But the worry is that, this sustained health crisis, or the economic crisis that comes from this health crisis, creates other unintended consequences that will take us a long time to recover from.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, and John mentioned it, he and I have talked a good deal over the last several weeks about the need to make sure that the real estate market can continue to flourish, that while we are going to have a recession, the depth of that recession, and whether it's a V, a U, or a W, real estate matters in terms of that. And so, one, I just want to say thank you for working overtime, you and all of your team, John, to make sure that real estate and the development industry continue to work in Henrico County. And I don't know if there's specific examples that you want to give of how local government has, in addition to keeping the courts open, been kind of agile and adaptive to allow construction to continue and real estate to continue.
I mean, we continue with all of the permitting processes that we have. It just looks a little different now. Anecdotally, we think we're processing permits faster now than we have in quite a while. And I've got folks that are literally teleworking every day. They're at home. That piece of paper matters more, I think, now than it ever has. And so we have a station that is literally set up outside of the administration building where folks can drop off permits, and they are getting calls right away. And all of that is continuing to move forward. Not in addition to that, you know, we're one of a handful of localities that continues to meet in person. I mean, Hanover and Henrico have decided that the boards have decided that they would rather meet in person and continue things like zoning cases. We've got, I think, 6 zoning cases on the agenda for May the 12th. And so that kind of activity continues. And, you know, I'm not sure we ever went into a mode legislatively whereby the only thing we're going to consider is emergency actions. The business of the county has continued. I mean, I have, today we have about 1,800 employees that are all teleworking. And there is activity that is occurring at each and every agency. And so for us, one of the things we've been talking about internally is, I don't think we realized before this crisis just how much work we can get done outside of the complex, outside of these buildings. And I don't know, Laura, if you have had similar experiences, or if any of you have, we've all learned how to work differently. And I think for us, there's a longer term application that we're going to put forward as far as the technology that we're using now and how we use that in our day-to-day interactions with, with our businesses and our residents. Now, on the business side too, one of the things that this board has been pretty adamant about is continuing the reduction of the gross receipts tax, which on May the 12th, we are going to ask them to increase the exemption, not deduction, but flat out exemption of the first $500,000 in gross receipts. 3 years ago, we were at $100,000. So what that means is about 80% of the businesses that operate in Henrico are not going to pay gross receipts tax, and the ones that do, really, they don't know that they're in Henrico County. I mean, they're not from here, right? They're from Minneapolis, or they're from, some other place in the world, and the B-poll tax is simply a cost of business. But I think for most of our small businesses, that's an approach. We continue tax relief for our seniors. While we've had to make a number of reductions, the reductions that we've made have not impacted any of those services. So I don't know if that answers your question, Laura.
Yeah, I think what you all are doing today is in many ways, what I experienced from Henrico during the recession, which is, and what all good leaders do, and all is that they make cuts that are invisible to their constituencies, right? That's what we always want to do, is how do we cut in ways that may make things difficult in the back end, but the folks we serve don't experience those cuts to the best of our ability. And so, I appreciate what you all have done in terms of real estate and construction. I know also that you've been doing some innovative things with your other small businesses, like purchasing meals from Henrico restaurants for first responders. So talk to us a little bit about other things that Henrico is doing for small businesses, because we know that Henrico, has been a leader in sports tourism, and that's going to be a challenge as we come back. But that you all have really taken this not only as an opportunity to create efficiencies that we all hope will continue, but really to think creatively about how you meet the needs of those small businesses, particularly those that are hurting.
So one of the, you mentioned the Nourish Henrico program. So as we went into this, we realized that we were going to have to break some rules as far as the governmental rules and the realm that we can operate in. And what I mean by that was, when we first started thinking about what can we do for the restaurants initially, and it was the restaurants and the hotels that started the conversation with Neil Amin calling and expressing some concern as we were in budget hearings in the middle of March about cash flow.
Neil being one of the biggest operators of hotels in the region.
And so that very real conversation led us to immediately push back the payment of any hotel tax or any meals tax or any real estate tax or any personal property tax until August. Basically, we did the most that was allowed under Virginia law, which was to charge a 0% interest rate. You have to charge you have to charge interest. It does. The law doesn't say you have to charge a rate that is greater than 0, if you can believe it or not. So that one action, I think, allowed Neil and some of the hotel industry to have some conversations across state lines. And this is something that, according to Neil, was picked up in other states. I know other regions of Virginia have done it. And so in one small way, I think we were able to help our hotels. The program for restaurants really came about from a conversation that we had with a local restaurant in Sandston, where a gentleman called me and said, "Look, I'm basically laying off my workforce in a couple days. My savings account, my checking account only has a couple $100s in it." And so we got busy and started thinking about what can we do, right? We're one of the region's largest employers, but we also have all these folks on the road, on the street, same time, police officers, firefighters, sheriff's deputies. We've got sanitation workers. We've got all these folks on the front lines. What if we just did something like a simple per diem where we gave them, pick a number, $15 a day, $20 a day to eat. And we had a number of restaurants, local restaurants, that signed up and said, if you come here, I will honor Henrico's program. And we figured out a way to, get these restaurants paid the next day. So that one program, we have gotten so many calls, notes, thank yous from local restaurants where we're in certain cases, we're their top payer of the week.
Wow.
And so we think we have effectively changed the narrative in over 200 local restaurants because of that one effort. That's going to cost us $150,000, or has cost us $150,000 since the middle of March. Now, to put that number into perspective, last year, restaurants in Henrico County paid us $30 million in meals tax. So there's no comparison. And, in order to be able to do this, you got to have an elected body that basically says, go do it. Another way that we have broken rules, if you will, is with what we have done with testing. So we were the first Virginia locality to stand up massive testing at Virginia Center Commons. We brought in a third party, ran through all of our public safety folks, police, fire, sheriff, then all the frontline employees that are working. We started running nursing home workers through, and largely Medicaid funded facilities that didn't have the ability to pay. And we said, look, don't worry about, we've got this. And then we started bringing in state agencies. We ran Dinwiddie Fire, of all things. Dinwiddie has a fire department that has 18 employees. 6 of them last week were out isolated because of some COVID-19 contact. So we ran the rest of their fire department through. And this is the kind of thing that, so last week I had a conversation with the governor's chief of staff, 2 in fact, and the Secretary of Health, Dr. Oliver. And so the conversation was, look, we're doing this. The ask is, can our numbers count as far as the results that the state is reporting? Because we're number 40, we're 48th in the nation in testing. And if we're going to open up businesses, we got to have, it's chicken and egg, right? I mean, you've got to have test results. And so the state has agreed that they will now be a partner in phase 2. But there and again, we had to do something that broke the rules, if you will, or the rigidity that we have, that we tend to like as government sometimes. And then right now, Laura, we're looking at, I've got a group of employees that is looking at, if we begin to reopen, can we use things like parking lots in shopping malls or shopping centers that perhaps restaurants can use, retail facilities can use, and somehow use that parking lot to lay out and make people feel like they're not, like there's more space between them.
Right.
And so we're looking at all of that, similar conversations occurring south of the river and in Hanover County. And I'll have more to report by the middle of the week as far as that concept goes.
So John, what is it that's kind of the secret sauce in Henrico, or the culture of Henrico, that has enabled you and your team to kind of adapt, think outside the box, really be nimble to deal with something that none of us have ever dealt with? What do you think? I know you have to be proud of your team, and obviously it starts from the top, but what would you say is really kind of in the culture of Henrico that's made this possible?
I mean, I cannot tell you how proud I am of the group of folks that are here. I mean, it's a culture that has been with us. I've been an employee for 25 years now, and it's part of when I first came to Henrico, I remember thinking, good grief, I mean, these people, they work, right? And so it's a little bit of a shark mentality internally, where the folks that stay really are of a certain caliber and display certain work certain work ethic. But over and above it all is this whole notion of public service. And you've got some knuckleheads in here that really believe in serving the public and doing it for all the right reasons. And in our form of government, quite frankly, we're able to do some things that other governments can't, because of the fact that we don't have the hurdles to pass. We don't have the number of elected officials to, bring along. We've got 5 board members that, have a very, very take a very business-minded approach. And they're all about effectiveness and outcomes. And, the direction that the board will give the manager or this administration isn't how to do something, it's to do something. It's to get somewhere. And so with that kind of direction, we can figure it out. And as far as the financial aspect, that's been our DNA. I mean, and so when we started with this $99 million shortfall, in reality, if we were, just another government, we could have said, you know what, we don't believe that hotel taxes are going to be impacted by between 40 and 50%. They're only going to be impacted by 10. So the hurdle isn't $99 million. It ends up being 15, 20, 30, pick a number, but it's not 99. Reality is, I think if we had taken that kind of approach, we would be doing a disservice. And oh, by the way, the first report that we have for hotel taxes and meals taxes about 35%. First indication, and hotel taxes down about 50%, which I'm a little surprised at the 50%, because we were thinking that number would have been even larger early on. But did that?
Yeah. And I think,
I mean,
I think also, trust. I mean, I think you have a board that trusts your ability and the ability of your team. And It's a board that trusts one another. And as you said, it's not about, it's not about press conferences. It's not about credit. It's about getting things done. And that's a whole different kind of attitude.
There
yeah.
is one other thing too that I will say I've seen change in my 25 years. And that is, 25 years ago, every decision would have been driven by some fiscal underpinning. So you are seeing Henrico as we, continue to grow, as our population becomes more dynamic, as our population becomes more diverse. You're seeing us make decisions. Yes, the fiscal is in the background, but you're also seeing the county make decisions that go beyond that and look at things like think about transportation, for instance, and what was done with GRTC recently. GRTC is going to be there's going to be a cost there, 80 cents on the dollar on a good day. And that was a decision that the board made, eyes wide open. You're seeing us make investments in areas and neighborhoods where think about Highland Springs and the area around the racetrack, where we have making significant investments in both of those areas in public infrastructure, in community revitalization, in actual street level services. And we're starting to see, and we'll see where we are coming out of this, some significant changes and enhancements in both of those areas. Highland Springs ended up being the state's largest historically designated, and I forget what the term is, Laura. We went through the
register.
Yeah, and so we've got over 1,000 properties in Highland Springs that are eligible for investment, and we're taking that approach to Sandston. And so those efforts, years ago, you would have had a Highland Springs and a Sandston in each of the magisterial districts. And what you're seeing this board do is focus, and I could not be more proud of this group and how they are thinking more of the we in the county as opposed to my district, my district, my district, my district. Everyone has their district, but they totally get, the need for a county-wide approach to so many issues, and in fact, a region-wide approach.
Absolutely. In fact, I was going to say people will never know the work that goes on behind the scenes, to have, conversations about regional challenges. One of those regional challenges, obviously, that I care an awful lot about is affordable housing. You and I have been on the phone in the last few weeks about some of those challenges, from homelessness to home ownership, and just speak a little bit to the work that Henrico is doing to address some of the challenges there.
With homelessness, we've had conversations mostly with the city, Chesterfield as well, but we have an opportunity with some one-time funds that have come about as a result of this COVID crisis to do something different with some of these facilities. So in Henrico, last year, we were able to partner with the city. We actually have a city-owned building that is located in Henrico off of Cool Lane in the Fairfield Magisterial District that ends up being, will end up being a facility for longer-term homeless folks to be able to transition back to the economy in society, if you will. And that is the county's that's the first homeless shelter that has been located in Henrico County, I believe in history. And the county's Board of Supervisors approved that project before the city council did. I mean, that's how well those conversations have gone. And when it comes to affordable housing, it's a struggle, right? I mean, we have you have changes that have been made in zoning going forward, density that has been put forward that in some cases I never would have envisioned. And we are rewriting our county's zoning ordinance as we speak. And we hope to be able to make more improvements and recognize what's possible in mixed use developments with inclusionary
Affordable dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units.
So I don't know if that answers your question, Laura. I feel like I've been rambling.
No, that's great. So just, I just have one more question, and this is really just kind of a,
Hey, Val.
while you get some water. Yeah. So, it's, you can watch the news, you can be disheartened by what, you see in the news. And sometimes I feel like we're just living in a 24/7 COVID situation. And it's sometimes you can get down on that, but I'm sure that you are seeing some amazing things happen, seeing people pull together, seeing people making real sacrifices for one another. And I'm just wondering if there are a couple of anecdotes that have really moved you over the last 6 to 8 weeks as we've experienced this challenge.
Laura, there have been so many different cases where I have seen public servants do things that I never would have envisioned. I think one of the things that comes to mind early on and the most is the approach that we took with nursing homes and some of our first responders and what they were able to do in reaching out. And the story of, Canterbury is tragic in that, we had so many folks die within a facility because, the rigidity of, the prevailing medical opinion that you can only test folks if they're sick. You can't test folks if they're next door to a sick person. And that advice has all changed, but ultimately what made all of that change locally is some of the actions and conversations that took place between, our health department, our public safety folks. I mean, what I have seen Danny Avula do, on the out in the public. I mean, you talk about a guy that, I don't know how many hours he's working a week. I know we're all working a lot of hours, but, I'm not out at 2 a.m. in a nursing home, and he is. And I'll tell you a funny story. So we had, Danny drives an old Honda. I don't know if you've ever seen his.
Danny,
Yeah. So and we were worried about that old Honda, being able to keep up. So early on, I asked our public safety folks to get him a county issued SUV. Just let him use it. And initially he said no, I don't want it. I've got a car, and I don't feel like I should do that. So we took the approach of actually driving the car to his house, leaving the keys in the ignition, and calling him and letting him know that the car was parked in front of his house. So he's at least had reliable transportation. But, it's people like that. And then it goes back to your question of, what's the special sauce? The special sauce is just that. And when you see it, your employees pick up on it. I mean, the fact that we're processing permits faster than we ever have. And there might be 3 people in the planning office. How does that happen? It's because, I think folks recognize and realize, look, we need to do this now, and this is our moment. And I think just going forward, how we react to the next series of of issues. How we reopen is going to be a defining moment because, you know, our economy is built on little kids playing on soccer fields. And, you know, we've got, yes, we have a good number of jobs in the county. But at the end of the day, if we can't have the jobs as well as the tourism and the sports tourism, our economy, it won't function as well as it can. So getting back to normal is going to require those kids being on those fields. And at a certain point, what do we do with the parents? What does that look like? And is this, you know, is it this fall we're talking about where we have, less activity? What happens next spring? What about next summer? And I think all of those questions are going to be answered in due time, but the approach of the county is, while we have stopped a number of capital projects that we had in the pipeline, we're not shifting gears as far as the approach to sports tourism, because, you know, I think that is a forever play. You go back 10 years, sports tourism in this region, I mean, Jack Berry was just starting, you know, to see what was possible. And every year after, I mean, we have as a region become a destination where people enjoy, you know, coming and visiting and experiencing, and that is they come back. And so I think going forward, that's a question as to what happens in that segment. But from the public, from this county's perspective, we're not deviating from that approach. In fact, the only projects that we have moving forward are several bond projects that tailor to just that activity.
Well, you're talking to folks who love to see people visit the region because you visit often enough, you decide maybe you want to live in this region. And I've got, 6,000 realtors who want to help people live in this region. So we certainly believe in that. I want to now, John, I appreciate you answering my questions. Some folks on the call might have some questions for you. So if you don't mind taking just a few more minutes.
Sure.
Okay, great. Joe, do we have questions for John?
The question inbox is open. So if you guys have any, please drop them in. But if you feel like John has answered all of your burning questions.
Let me ask you all from your perspective, as opposed to if you were sitting in the county manager's seat right now, what is it that you think Henrico can do better? Where is it that we might be lacking in serving you? And it's totally open, totally. I'd love to have that kind of feedback from you all while we have a chance.
And if you guys want to give John feedback on that, you do have the authority to unmute yourself, and you're welcome to. Go ahead and do that and jump in.
No one's taking that bait, John. I will say, we, the home builders, Dana Markland and I were on a call with your colleague, Joe Casey, your counterpart in Chesterfield on Friday. And, for us, as long as the courts are open, our members can pretty much, do their business. Now, if you're, what we want to make sure is that the county does everything it can to, facilitate the ongoing development of not only housing, but multifamily, and then commercial, retail. I mean, Henrico historically has had a great balance there, but we want people to have choices in the county. We want them to have affordable choices when it comes to housing. So if we're taking care of the affordable housing challenge, or you all are, and you're also making sure that what our members need to be able to practice, sell new homes if they're available, I think that's what we are, as an industry, are looking for. And you all have been really extraordinarily responsive to that. Well, again, our industry, we're a little bit downstream from the home builders. They're a little bit worried about supply chain and those kinds of issues. I don't think our members are seeing that. Now they can unmute themselves and tell me I'm wrong about that. But, you know, I think our members are finding that they're able to, as long as they can close the transaction, we're in pretty good shape.
I got a little bit of feedback. Libby said, keep doing what you're doing, continue to get the permits out quickly. And both Claire and John had put theirs into the public chat. That Claire just says quite impressive, and thank you for all that you and your staff have done. And John said it's a tough question you posed to us, not being on the front line like you are. But I know certainly I, as a Henrico resident, appreciate all the work that you've been doing, and really leading by example. And it's been quite heartening for me as a private citizen, just in my own life and trying to figure out how we're doing this.
Well, you all know, so I've got this crazy long Greek last name, right? But the email is really easy. Anybody afterwards, it's VIT at henrico.us. So at any point, if anyone has a thought, anyone sees anything, a question that we can help with, again, we are, this week is dedicated to some sort of, let's begin to get back to or think about getting back to normal. That's going to take a little while as far as how we do it and how we go about it. But the premise is that we cannot sustain an unemployment rate that approaches 16%. It's just going to do things to the economy that we can't contemplate right now. And there's not going to be enough money in the federal government, state government, county government, and anything we can do to help folks, you know, get back to normal. And a lot of that is going to be, you know, in people's hearts and minds. It's going to be psychological. You know, we're going to have to start to do what we can to make people feel like they're safe or safer. But that's the approach. And if anyone has any other thoughts or anything that we can consider, please let us know. Laura, what you and Joe continue to do for us in this region, I mean, it's absolutely incredible when, you know, you think about where we are as a region and some of the conversations that each of the localities have and this we aspect to some of those conversations. I want the membership of the Realtors to know that this lady, Laura Lafayette, has been a key component to making that happen. Because, I mean, I don't know of any other organization in the region where everyone, it's almost like sitting at a table with your family. You bring that kind of credibility to the effort. And, you know, the reality is we have a moment in time, and I think the moment in time that Laura Lafayette has put forward is really changing who we are as a region. So thank you.
Oh, John, you're too kind. We should probably end on that note, though. Thank you, John.
All right.
Deeply
Thank
grateful.
you all.
Before we go, if anybody has any questions or things, you know how to find, you have my email at this point from the invite. So if anything comes up later, you want answered, let me know and we'll pass it forward. But thank you for being here. And John, thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
Absolutely.
Take care.
All righty.
John.
Y'all have,
Well.
all right. Stay safe.